many times as we've loved.
Hello, Columbia. Happy Valentine's Day. We're here as representatives of Spectrum to discuss the nature of romance and relationships at Columbia. I'm Derek Turner, and I'm a blogger and a columnist for The Spectator.
I'm Emily Tamkin. I'm also a columnist and blogger.
And I'm Jim Pagels, and I am also a blogger.
And resident love expert.
And resident, as I'm commonly referred to in the office. I try to keep that
on campus, in classes.
We take our cues from him.
Yep.
I've heard rumors of relationships going on, possibly.
I think, here's what I've noticed at Columbia. There are people who are in relationships, and there are people who are hooking up and or just single, but there's very little in between, right? It's not a courtship culture. Probably because it's not the 19th century, but what I'm saying is that people don't really go on dates. You see these people, and it's either like they've just been in this relationship, or like, oh no, he or she just hooks up.
No, I think it's true. Many of the relationships I know of at Columbia seem to have just been there since time immemorial.
Right, exactly. It's like, how did you people... Like,
there's no... The process has, I think, been lost.
I definitely think the process of asking people on dates is definitely... I think people get into relationships by just being around people and being in clubs or activities or living on the same floor and whatnot. I've never heard of this process of like, what are you doing Friday night? Could I take you out to a movie and dinner?
I don't know why. I can't get enough of your love, babe.
Like my personal opinion is that hookup culture is somewhat destructive in different ways. But is there a general understanding of whether it's good or bad, or is this a fact of college life?
I think it's just, I mean, it can be good or bad and be a fact of college life, right? Like the fact that it exists and is something that I mean, there is a hookup culture at Columbia, and the fact that it exists doesn't mean that it's not a good thing or a bad thing.
Where it becomes kind of an issue is when people don't realize that they're in a hookup culture relationship. I think if people are upfront about it, then that kind of, people are getting what they want to have a relationship, and they put that beforehand. I think it's not as much an issue.
I think that it's an issue if and when it leads to students on this campus not respecting one another. I mean, other than that, like if you want to hook up, go crazy, but treat each other well as individuals.
Is it hypocritical, though, to complain about the lack of relationships on campus while simultaneously indulging in hookup culture?
In something that kind of... But the thing is, okay, so here's the thing. Now that I've said it 3 times. You hear a lot about, oh, there's no relationships at Columbia, people aren't in relationships at Columbia, that's not what people come here for. There actually are many people at Columbia who are in relationships, right? Like if you actually think about the people you know, plenty of them do have boyfriends or girlfriends. I
think, though, that there are some structural and cultural issues with Columbia that prevent relationships from happening, in the sense that...
Or discourage them.
Discourage them, yeah. And that, for example, we think about every action at Columbia that we do here as a means to something, for our further personal success.
Right.
And from many of my discussions with people, they see relationships not as added value, but as almost a distraction, or as something that doesn't necessarily help them in their goals at Columbia.
Exactly, because it takes away from time that you could be spending on your classes, or in extracurriculars, or writing cover letters, or whatever, and you're like, oh, I just don't have time for that right now. What I'm saying is, like, if you really want to make the time for that, and if you're like, no, this is what I want, this is what's important to me, then absolutely you can be in a relationship at Columbia.
Lord, some things I can't get used to, no matter how I try.
I'm shocked. We want to bring the chord to this.
Because we spend a lot of time reading books that address issues of love and of these real raw emotions and interactions between people. And do we ever see them as virtuous, or as, like, do we ever get enthralled by Pride and Prejudice in a way that affects our desires in real life? Or do we just...
I'm so not answering that question.
I just feel...
Where are you, Mr. Darcy?
No, the ideal of the core curriculum is to help us understand what the virtues are of life.
Right.
And I think in many of the core curriculum books we read, it values relationships and love and romance in a way that, if it were achieving the ideal of the core curriculum, then we would be impelled to want that in our own lives.
It's actually really funny that you say that, because I can still remember in Lit Hum reading the symposium, and we got to the part where they talk about, you know, the humans who are split in 2, and it's your soulmate, your other half. And my teacher was like, "Isn't this so beautiful? Like, aren't you guys so enthralled by this reading? Aren't you like, this is like our version of love? Isn't that wonderful?" And I just remember everyone sitting there like, "Yeah, that's great. Can we go back to talking about like the wild orgy scene or?" But you're right. That's not what we were there focus on. It's like, let's go back and count the ships from the Iliad.
Exactly, and that's why I think it's tragic. The core curriculum should be alive in all of our lives.
And including our love lives.
Especially.
Especially our love lives.
I think that is the lesson of Valentine's Day, that love is one of the pure joys and virtues of life.
I think the real lesson of Valentine's Day, or certainly of this video, is that, to quote Hugh Grant in the 2004 Christmas classic, love actually is all around us. And if what you want is that love to manifest itself in a relationship, you can find that on or off campus. But if you didn't this Valentine's Day, it's alright, Columbia. There's love in this world for you too.
Baby, it didn't take all of my life to find you. But you can believe it's gonna take the rest of my life to keep you.